Welcome to Equipping the Core. Today I'm chatting with Maj Sean Docherty, the product manager working on tactical applications, software, and services modernization. Some of you may think of your home network, but have you ever considered Marines need network services in the field? If not, after today you will. Let's jump in. So we've had a few folks from your team, Colonel Monta and Digi, just this season, but can you give us the elevator pitch for CES?
Well, first, Morgan, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here today. As far as portfolio command element systems, I would consider us to be the Swiss Army knife of Marine Corps Systems Command, and that's because of kind of the eclectic nature of all of our programs. So we have everything from communication systems, which is communications layer technologies for the Marine Corps, to PM wargaming in the Wargaming Center. We have PM command and control systems, which are the command and control technologies that you see within many of the command posts proliferated across the force. And then we also have PM Intel, which are the intelligence systems that we have spread across the force.
I like that analogy, a Swiss Army knife. I've never heard it referred to that way.
Yeah, you know, it is when you get there and you think things are going to be similar in most instances, and you see that there's just a wide array of different technologies. At first, it's pretty difficult to wrap your head around.
Technology in general, I feel like it's sometimes hard to wrap your head around.
Absolutely.
Yeah. For those of us who don't know you, what exactly does a product manager do day to day? Or weekly?
Yeah, I would say it's different across each portfolio.
Okay.
And that's because of really the difference in technologies that we're all working with or the products that we are assigned to. So as a product manager within command and control systems, we are very focused on the modernization of our IT portfolio and the systems that Marines use to enhance their commanders' situational awareness on the battlefield. On a day-to-day basis, we're doing everything from monitoring our cost associated with the budget to speaking to a wide array of vendors across private industry, into designing, government off-the-shelf technologies with some of our engineering and development team.
Would you say your team often, maybe not weekly, but do you engage with the fleet as well to get their feedback as you're developing and working on new systems?
I would offer that that's the most important facet of our job here at Marine Corps Systems Command. I spend at least a portion of every day I come to work communicating across all three MEFs with some of our operational forces, I would say most highly touted technologists, from our data systems engineers across all three MEFs to the fire engagement cells. We spend a lot of time getting their feedback to institute or implement that feedback into the design of the systems that we're fielding.
Tell me about your team. I heard you're working on 4 different efforts, but I'll let you dive into all of those.
Sure. Yeah. So the tactical software applications and services team is really defined by 3 primary efforts. The first is data as a service. The second is platform as a service. And the third is visualization as a service. And I'll kind of get into the technologies that surround those as a service models, but also the technologies that we have that we're fielding to support or enable that capability. For data as a service, what we're attempting to do or enable across the force is to provide commanders at the edge the capability to access and to utilize all the disparate data that currently resides across our force.
Okay.
Right. So whether it's tactical data, whether it's troop movements, whether it is administrative data that they can use for daily decision making, much of that data over the years has been developed in a siloed fashion across different databases. And it's our job to identify methods in which we can access that data and then, more importantly, make it usable for the Marines. So that kind of really intuitively transitions into visualization as a service. When you talk data to most Marines, we were out at one MEF last week, and we had a master guns kind of barking over at us saying, what do you mean data as a service, and what does that do for my commander? And I said, Master Guns, you have to visualize that all of that data is going to be represented on a user interface.
We're not just going to hand you over the data
That's
and
right.
expect you to go through it.
Here's a bunch of ones and zeros. Here's how you implement it within your command post. That's not the idea here. The idea is that if you can present that data in an intuitive fashion on a wide array of user interfaces that may be applicable to particular use cases, almost in an a la carte fashion, right? If I'm supporting an HADR mission today, I may need one user interface. Or if I'm supporting fires engagement in another use case, I may need another user interface.
Okay.
But all of those user interfaces, all those visualization tools should be interoperable with the data that we're consuming. So our team's primary mission is to, one, make that data accessible, and then two, let's present that data in an intuitive fashion to enhance and expedite decision-making on the battlefield.
When I'm envisioning this as kind of, let's say you're watching a TV show and they have like the command center van or something that pulls up outside an operation and you can see full picture of where everyone's at and movements and all that. That's kind of what I'm envisioning when you're taking this data and putting it out. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good description. Our goal is to take it one step further, right? I think when you walk into most command posts across the force today, you would see that. You would see ground force maneuver elements, possibly the air domain, but our job within tactical software applications and services is to bring more information to bear to achieve information dominance on the battlefield, right?
Okay.
So what is the information that we don't have today that we could seek to implement or make accessible? And those are things like radar data and unstructured data that we could potentially correlate and then make available for fires decisions authorities and things along those lines.
What is unstructured data?
Yeah, so the two primary, without getting extremely technical, the two primary forms of data that you're going to consume within a command post are structured and unstructured data.
Okay.
Structured data is what would come from a sensor or a radar, and it can be measured very intuitively and typically visualized equally as intuitively. When you start to have unstructured data, you're thinking PowerPoint slides, PDF documents.
Okay.
Those are the documents that as you attempt to present those, it's a little bit more difficult.
Gets convoluted.
That's absolutely correct.
Okay. Interesting.
And just kind of moving along, because once you talk data as a service and then you visualize it with visualization as a service, you need a place to host all of this capability, right? So these capabilities don't come to bear on the back of a computer in most instances. There's a platform associated with that, and that's our platform as a service tool, which is identified as the common hosting environment. Chi. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And what Chi does is Chi provides that virtual infrastructure. So when you look at any data center across private industry or the military force, you usually think servers, switchers, and routers. You think that
a big
physical
warehouse.
infrastructure.
Yeah.
That's right. Those massive data centers that control all of the network and are responsible for effectively disseminating that information across the force. But there is middleware that exists in between the infrastructure and those workstations.
Okay.
And that is our virtual infrastructure. That is our common hosting environment. And the goal of the common hosting environment is to take all of your warfighting applications and services and standardize a very intuitive mechanism where we could host those capabilities. So whether or not I'm in the MEF COC and I'm attempting to consume 30 different functional warfighting capabilities, or if I'm at the tactical edge and I just need 3, it would be great to have a platform that could host those warfighting functions.
So then you just have one place to go and pull which modules or data you need, because it's all in the one spot.
That's absolutely correct.
Okay.
Yeah, think of it almost again as an a la carte menu, right? When you go to your the Apple iStore and you attempt to download a new application for your iPhone, that is the type of intuitive user experience that Marines should also have at their fingertips. So whether or not they're going to the Marine Corps Enterprise Network Software Center are the common hosting environment application storefront. They should be able to download the tools most applicable to their mission and then install them on that virtual infrastructure, that platform as a service.
Okay. Being able to choose which systems or softwares that they're wanting to use, that must save space as well on whatever they're saving it on. So they're not using up all their memory on applications they're never going to use.
You're all over. It's like you've done this before or been an IT professional in the past. Yeah.
I've done communications for IT.
Yeah, so one of our most wicked problems within the communications field is the fact that we want small, lightweight, power-efficient network stacks, and we want to move with them quickly, but we also want all of our warfighting functions at the edge. And it's counterintuitive to think that way. There are systems that can produce that type, that have the capacity, the storage, and the compute to do that. However, the systems we have across our echelons today, you have to limit the amount of capabilities that you're going to host at each tactical echelon.
Because if not, it slows down. Kind of, I'm thinking just on day-to-day using our computers. If you have too many applications open, the entire machine will just freeze up. So you have to start closing them down.
I would say that's correct. Two things. Mm-hmm. I would say, yes, we are always going to have bandwidth constraints. Yeah. And those bandwidth constraints are absolutely going to impact the quality of service associated with your tools.
Makes sense.
But we will also have equipment constraints. So if that server that you're attempting to implement in the first island chain is only capable of hosting 6 applications with full operational loads effectively, then you have to take that into consideration prior to crossing the line of departure and preparing for the engagement.
And wargaming, you would take that into consideration.
Absolutely. Yeah, so what the model we used in 3MEF in Okinawa while I was there was we identified the primary warfighting capabilities necessary for a Cobra Gold or a Bal-Catan or a particular operational plan. And we would say, do we need chat? Do we need common operational picture? Do we need fires capabilities? And we would preload those services in advance to deployment.
We talked about the standardization that she will bring, but have there been challenges as well? Because you did mention that they've been using other systems in the past, like whenever you're out in the field.
Yeah, the issue with technology is that it is extremely difficult to keep up with.
It's very fast.
So as technology continues to modernize around us, and within the Marine Corps, we are sprinting to keep up with it. Sometimes many times the fleet gets ahead of us, and they are procuring their own systems, their own services that are typically best suited for their use case. And for us, we are seeking standardization across systems command and the enterprise owner, Mar4 Cyber and the Marine Corps Cyber Operations Group, the MCOG, in order to ensure that we are aligned in fielding this as a service model. Our thought within the program office is if we can align with Mar4 Cyber and the MCOG and we can field a single instantiation of a platform service tool, and in the program office, we can test that against all of the warfighting virtualized applications and services available, then we can put in a certain level of engineering rigor behind testing prior to fielding.
Okay.
And the fleet may not be able to keep up with us in that regard. So once they begin to witness the value of that integration of all of those warfighting capabilities and a single platform service tool with standardized configurations, our thoughts are that it will sell itself.
They'll want to use our system versus going out and purchasing their own.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be one-offs, and there's always going to be unique use cases that are only applicable to those missions, and we recognize that. But if we can align the majority, we think it will be critical for interoperability during the next major fight.
Okay, you just said interoperability. which actually makes me want to jump ahead a little bit and talk about the network modernization plan. Can you tell us a bit about that?
The network modernization plan was the Marine Corps' effort to align our network to strategic guidance from multiple sources. So whether or not that was the Commandant's Planning Guidance, the Force Design 2030 annual updates, or the National Defense Strategy, there was recognition that the Marine Corps required a network modernization to achieve information dominance on the battlefield. And what the team at IC4 and different elements of Headquarters Marine Corps looked at were 4 lines of effort, distinct lines of effort that included network infrastructure and communications layer technologies. So these are your satellite as a service capabilities, some of those widely now proliferated low Earth orbit capabilities that we see in PM communication systems. It also took a look at a hybrid cloud and data center model. So the proliferation of cloud down to the tactical edge. How do we ensure that Marines aren't necessarily required to bring their own infrastructure with them any longer, right? We're more lightweight, we're increasingly maneuverable, and we are still leveraging all of the capability of a massive data center, but we're doing so at the edge without the equipment co-located with us.
Because it's going back to the cloud and pulling the information from there.
That's absolutely correct. Or you have a tactically located Cloudlet. In the network modernization plan, the platform service tool identified and referenced in that document is the common hosting environment. So you have a tactical Cloudlet located potentially in the first island chain that is hosting only those core services, so that anyone that is not directly located or tied in physically into that network locally can still utilize all the capability that is hosted there.
Like, let's say you have all these applications that you know you're going to need on the mission.
Sure.
You would have those already on your system before heading out.
That's right.
But then would those systems have to still reach back to gather data, or does it automatically pull?
Well, it's almost a hybrid model, right? So what you would see in theory is those critical services, and most IPTs that I've been, privileged enough to be a fly on the wall for, identified limited intelligence services, fires capability, a common operational picture to view both friendly and enemy tracks, and then tactical chat to communicate and update and ensure that those critical messages continue to flow at the tactical edge. Those services would be hosted locally.
Okay.
And Marines that are within that, let's say, Echelon 6 formation would still have access to those local services. And in periods where connectivity was reestablished, you would then have access back to a larger cloud, let's call it at the tactical entry points, which are geographically located, that would have more robust warfighting services available.
Okay.
Yeah, and as you continue through that net mod plan, they continue down almost the OSI model where they get to applications and services. So we've talked about this a little bit. This is your applications as a service model. These are your application storefronts, right? So the McSen's instantiation is the McSen Software Center, and Marines can go to the McSen Software Center and they can download tactical applications today, like Tactical Assault Kit. And within the common hosting environment and other elements of the Marine Corps, there are also other tactical application storefronts. And this dissemination and this, I would say, wide-scoped availability of services is really a paradigm shift from receiving Blu-ray discs in the past and having to upload those technologies locally, right? And then finally, the NetMod plan looks at the cybersecurity portion of securing the network and establishing the MCOG, or the Marine Corps Cyber Operations Group, as a certified cybersecurity provider, and all of the standards associated with running a modernization plan. If I were to sum it up, it is about modernizing to achieve information dominance. And then also the 1A, or the secondary initiative, would be to widely proliferate cloud services in order to enable that joint all-domain command and control sensor-to-shooter environment at the edge.
So how does this tie in with JADC2 or Project Convergence or MAGTAF C2? How does the net mod plan bring all those together or tie into those?
Yeah, it's all like everything we've talked about is kind of tangentially related, right? So you need to access the data, right? But in order to access the data, you need those communications layer technologies to reach back into those data repositories, those data lakes, so that one, you are connecting to those repositories, then you are accessing those repositories, and you are sending that information back to a platform service tool like the common hosting environment, and then you are making it visually available and intuitive for Marines to use, right? So if you just think one mission thread of a radar with structured sensing capability in the mechanism for information flow across this network down to the edge, there are half a dozen systems that are going to be responsible for enabling that environment. Wow. And ensuring that that cloud technology is available at the edge will limit the overhead, limit the infrastructure necessary for Marines to enable that type of mission thread, that type of data, and that accessibility. When you look at Project Convergence and Overmatch and really the components flavors of JADC2 or the Joint All-Domain Command and Control, they're all attempting to do the same thing. They're all attempting to make data readily accessible and ensure that data arrives in a timely fashion to a system capable of firing for effect.
Archie, is that just for the Marine Corps, and then Army, Navy, Air Force, do they have their own Chi, or is it all combined?
One of the interesting things about all of this is that each service has their own flavor and instantiation of each capability.
Because the requirements are different.
In certain instances, and in certain instances, it's because if we're being realistic, Marines like to build things on their own sometimes, right? And I think it's incumbent upon the project office to recognize that's a fact, and then to scan the wider service community to look for systems and ecosystems that already exist today that we could potentially reuse for our own use case, right? So what we're doing today is we are working directly with the folks at Project Overmatch. And we're also working with our counterparts at PEO-C3T, the Army's Command and Control Program Office, to just identify whether or not their platform service tools, their data as a service tools are applicable to the Marine Corps use case. And we're doing our best to reuse that software and code to enable our own instantiation.
I would say, because whenever we're able to reuse or piggyback off of the other services, it definitely speeds up the acquisition process. And we can get the software out to Marines faster.
That is the first value proposition associated with that work. And then number two, it almost certainly ensures interoperability. Right? If we're using the same tools with the same configurations, then we are not working backwards attempting to reconfigure or deconstruct configurations in order to achieve interoperability.
Yeah,
and
you're
we do
already
that
going to
too
be
often.
Interoperable.
That's correct.
Okay, you've mentioned fire control a lot as we're talking about data. I'm assuming that your team works closely with the other PIFMs. Let's say that we have a fire control system that GCS has for one of the systems down there. Would you work with that team on that system and software, or do they go through their process, testing, IoT&E, all of that, and then it comes over to your team to be embedded into Chi?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question, and I'll give you a two-part concise answer.
Okay.
One, those virtualized services must be hosted on Chi.
Okay.
Two, the data associated with those capabilities must be accessible to our data as a service capability. Because if we can access that data, then we can make it, we can visualize that data on a common operational picture or a single pane of glass, which ingest fires, intel, command and control, administrative data for the user. But do we actually get into their development environment and help them code the software? We are not responsible for that. That is certainly a project office task.
And then once it reaches fielding milestones, see all that, then it comes over and gets added to the software center?
One of the value propositions of Chi is the fact that we run a monthly sprint where we test all of the functional capabilities or all of those tools in our platform environment. So upon fielding that your fires tool, your intelligence tool, your command and control tool works with the group policies, within the confines of the system that we have configured. And then when the Marines go to implement that during a mission, they can be assured that everything is going to work effectively. So that is the value proposition for new program offices that may have not yet virtualized their capabilities, to recognize that this capacity exists within Marine Corps Systems Command. And once they have made the transition to a virtualized capability, they have a project team that is open arms, willing to accept that tool into the environment for fielding purposes.
So it's all in their developmental process. It gets added, the software center. Interesting.
What you're seeing is the fact that 50% or more of the systems that have been hardware dependent in the past have now recognized that we need to move away from these hardware dependencies. We need to virtualize or even containerize our capabilities, and then we need to host those on a platform service tool. And Chi is attempting to solve that exact problem.
Because we're trying to be lighter and faster, and we can't be lighter and faster if we're constantly bringing out additional hardware for every system.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of my favorite metrics that we share within command and control systems is that we have reduced the weight of the combat data network, which is our network routers, switches, and servers, by over 1 million pounds across the AAO today.
That's impressive.
So all of those fielded systems, we've gone from 4 Marine required carry of a single case to almost backpackable form factors.
Big difference.
Absolutely.
We've talked a lot about what your team is doing now and what you want to be doing, what the goals are for the future. Is there anything that you would want to see from industry?
One of the problems that I've witnessed and continue to witness over the course of the last 36 months are our private industry partners continue to create capabilities that are very vendor specific. Right? So there's a technical term called a modular open systems architecture, or MOSA. And an open systems architecture allows you to insert or extract new technologies in a very rapid fashion. And as a result, not interfere with the effectiveness or the operability of the system. And we're having trouble doing that with environments that include multiple private industry partners and private industry vendors, right? So create your architectures in an intuitive fashion, recognizing that we are going to need to update our ecosystems very rapidly in a wartime environment, and allow those systems to be modular and not have dependencies on other systems and services within the architecture.
We've touched on this and we've talked about partnerships and now like how you work with portfolios, but I'm going to assume again that you work closely with the other services, especially when you talked about Project Convergence, JADC2, like we're constantly collaborating and talking about what we're doing.
I would say this is a personal opinion,
okay,
right? But for me, I always start with the Marines, right? That's the first conversation I'm always going to have. What functional updates do the operational forces believe we need to pursue to enhance a product? The second conversation is almost always going to be joint.
Yes.
Right? So here is the path that the Marines have recommended. Are you hearing a similar story from your formations? If so, what method are you pursuing in order to enable that capability? And then 3 would be coalition partners.
Okay.
All right. So now it makes for a very dynamic engineering task to meet the Marines' intent, enhance the product effectively while maintaining joint and coalition interoperability. But we do our best to take all those considerations into the design of our systems and applications.
Sounds like sometimes there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, as they say.
Always.
Always. Which you need. You need all the different inputs, the diversity of thought, all of that together to make the Marine Corps stronger.
Perspective is critical,
Yeah.
but timeliness is equally as important.
Yes.
Right? So taking perspective into consideration and then making an informed decision and accepting a level of risk with that decision to execute aggressively is calculus. And we don't always get the problem right.
No, we talk about risk a lot. It's important in project management.
Correct.
Yeah. I was wondering, how does MCTISA tie into any of the work your team is doing? So let's say that there's an issue with an application or the hosting environment. Does that come to our team or does that go to MCTISA?
Yeah, MCTISA is one of our closest partners.
Okay.
MCTISA, obviously part of Marine Corps Systems Command,
Yes.
right? Which goes unnoticed occasionally. However, anytime we have an experiment that needs to be conducted, one of the most important facets of MCTISA is they typically bring an operational flavor to the conversation. They have such close ties into each MEF, and they can experiment with our program of record equipment, applications, and services, and they can typically do it in a very timely fashion to provide valuable recommendations for design decisions. So I personally look at MCTISA as one of our closest partners in this race to modernization, and I don't think we'd be able to do it effectively without them.
Now that I feel like Megamind, I have all the information in my head. We'll see if it stays. Let's talk about you. So where are you from originally?
Interesting story. I'll start with my parents because it's a great story and one that I'm proud of. My father immigrated from Scotland, Paisley, Scotland, as a young boy into New York City. And my mother was born on a small country farm in southern Illinois, and they just happened to meet at college. And then they wound up in central New Jersey.
Okay.
So I am from a small town called Brick Township, New Jersey, close to the coast. Spent every year of my life there until I entered the Corps at age 22.
Okay.
But yeah, very proud of that upbringing. Got brought up in a blue-collar family. My father was a police officer. And my mother started with social services and then ended up in one of the school districts.
When you said wicked earlier, I was like, he's from up north.
Well, yeah, I get pinged for Boston all the time, unfortunately.
You do have more of a Boston.
But yeah, Yankees through and through.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm a New Jersey native. So we're about an hour from Yankee Stadium, but also only about an hour north of Philly. So right in the middle
You're
there
in a
New
good
Jersey.
spot. Do you go home often?
We go home too often. So yeah, I ended up marrying my high school sweetheart, and we have 3 kids together.
High school.
And we go home because we are from the same hometown quite frequently.
Who doesn't love going home?
No comment. Yeah, I plead the fifth.
I'm from a small town in Mississippi, so I get it. But I find that I romanticize it a little bit more now that I don't live there, and now I can go home and be like, oh, it's just this cute little town. They only have one coffee shop. Like, it's just...
I have nothing but positive things to say.
Yeah.
I would just prefer to be in a warmer climate And I think maybe San Diego, Okinawa, and the Tampa area
maybe
have done that to
beach?
me. A beach would be great. And a climate in the 70s is what I'm shooting for.
Why did you join the Marine Corps?
Yeah, I don't have a romantic story about sense of duty. I think it goes back to my parents again. My parents taught me just a fierce work ethic and a desire to give back. I think with their chosen professions of police work and then social services into a child study team in an elementary school and high school, my parents are men and women of service, and I just wanted to give back as something they gave me at a very early age.
They influenced you. And
absolutely.
They shaped the way that you see the world and how you want to be as a person. Okay, you mentioned your dad immigrated to the U.S. and that he became a police officer, but word around the campfire is also that he played soccer. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. So as any wee lad from Scotland would probably
football, bad.
Have a hobby, right? His was soccer growing up. He probably only because of his soccer prowess was selected to attend a university, of which he probably had no business being at the time. And sorry to my father if he hears this, but he played semi-professional in a small town in northern New Jersey called Kearney, New Jersey.
Okay.
At the time, Kearney was a hub of Scottish immigrants, and obviously at the time had a very renowned soccer program. So he was seen by a scout and then scouted onto a team in Southern Illinois, Blackburn University, and that's where he met my mom. My brother and I both picked up the fever as young children, and I went on to play soccer in college as well. So not quite as successful, but very proud of his accomplishments and his back, both of my parents' stories as they came up.
Do you still play soccer for fun?
The young Marines, or I should say a few of the captains in my office have been attempting to twist my arm, but I'm having a hard enough time trying to stay healthy just with my basic PT. So I'm going to leave that to them for now. And how I have scratched that itch is I have been coaching my 7-year-old and my 6-year-olds, U7 girls and U6 boys teams for the last 3 years. And I get plenty of soccer in that forum.
I could see that. Do you have the kids that sometimes will just pick the flowers?
All of them. All of them, yeah, including my own.
That's the best part.
I don't know if we share that opinion. But it's been a treat in order to have the opportunity to coach them as well. So it's you can call it a lineage of soccer from starting with the grandpa all the way down to now my kids.
Family of stars.
Something along, maybe one at the top, and then the rest of us just trying to get along.
Yeah, and your oldest daughter, she is doing martial arts?
Yes. Morgan, you are good, and you have a great memory. So my oldest daughter, Ada, is in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And she is a stone cold killer. I don't know how else to put it. Her brother gave it a go for a little bit, and now he just serves as her test dummy at home.
Does he put the pads on?
He just, if you hear screaming somewhere in the house, it's typically her putting it on him. But yeah, she's absolutely just enjoying it. And I think the portion of it that she enjoys most is it's a very cerebral sport, right?
Yes.
It's methodical. It is maneuver to maneuver. And the individual who could think ahead 3 steps, which is very much my oldest, is going to be most successful. And let's just say my little man didn't have that same acumen for the sport to start. I'm
not as familiar with Jiu-Jitsu, but I know with Muay Thai, it's very much like you got to keep your stance right. Like always go back to the same stance, And
that's right. And it's maintaining composure. It is maintaining your breathing technique. Yes. And my daughter's just able to kind of think through all of those strategies during a match or a session. And she's been very successful as a result.
You said that you and your wife were high school sweethearts. But y'all also went to the same college. Is that correct? No. Okay.
So we stayed together off and on through college, came back together. She found out over lunch that I had signed a contract for the Marine Corps.
You hadn't told her beforehand?
No.
Wow.
So, and she's like, we'll give it a chance. And that chance is still going, 16 years later. So
that's so sweet.
She wouldn't say that. Looking back, maybe. Yeah, looking back.
Well, you hear of high school sweethearts, but you don't always, I hate to say it, see them stay together.
Sure.
And the fact that y'all have, and you have 3 kids, it's really beautiful.
Yeah, I think what it is the ability to grow together, right? So I think it's very easy to grow apart. And it is increasingly difficult today with technology and your cell phone to continue to grow closer and closer together. And if you're willing to put the phone down and continue to communicate and challenge one another to become better, I think you can grow together.
I agree.
But it's not easy.
And she's a teacher, right?
She is. Yeah. So you're great, Morgan. One of the reasons that we made the decision, I will say Caitlin and I made the decision to pursue the acquisitions community, not only for, the strategic impact that my wife was not as in awe over, was the fact that, in 14 years, she's been asked to move 7 times and had to pursue 7 new teaching jobs and never achieved tenure for a 14-year educator. Yeah. So that's one of the ugly parts of the Corps, that, these very resilient and just, I'm in awe of these families that are successful in this community are unable to do is establish stability.
Yes.
So there's a little bit more stability, not a ton more, but there's a little bit more stability in this occupational field. And I know that was something that, of course, was of interest to the Docherty clan.
As someone whose parents were not in the service, but who went to 4 different high schools, right, I completely understand. It disrupts everything, and it's nice to have this ability, especially once they get older, the change becomes harder.
Right.
Yeah. You've had lots of assignments since you joined, but recently you were at MPS, and so you're here doing your Payback Tour. Is that correct?
Correct up until the end.
Okay.
I got selected to attend NPS out of Okinawa. I did my 2 years at NPS, and then I was sent to Marine Corps Systems Command on a utilization tour.
Utilization.
And last year, I was fortunate enough to get selected as an acquisitions officer. So I officially lateral moved out of the communications occupational field into the acquisitions and program management field. And this is my first year in the team lead billet.
As an 8061 as well.
That's correct. Yeah. So first year as an 8061, trial by fire, but learning slowly but surely. And it's because I have a really fantastic team around me.
Was there a reason you decided to switch over to an 8061?
It was, for me, one of the more bittersweet situations in my career. You join, and most Marines stay in to be with the Marines, surrounded by Marines, in arduous and difficult situations with Marines. But I did recognize that the impact that I could have on those very Marines in this seat would be far greater. So I was, through the first 14 years of my career, able to make an impact on a very personal level.
Yeah.
And I will always adore those relationships that were built over the years. And now I believe I'm able to make an impact on more of an operational or even strategic level from my current seat.
I've heard a lot of the Marines that do make the switch to an 8061. They miss that being around Marines all the time, and being, not that there aren't Marines here, but it is a little bit different, but the work we're doing here is so important, and they also see the value in that too. And we definitely need more 8061s or 8059s in the Marine Corps.
One of the most important facets of the 8061 OC field. And this Marine Major's opinion is to maintain a large Rolodex of operational contacts. So I've recognized that importance early on. I have a thick Rolodex across all three MEFs. I continue to expand that Rolodex because I recognize that my technical acumen and understanding of current technology will quickly become outdated, and I will rely on them. So I'm able to maintain some sense of being part of the force tangentially through those relationships. And I don't think I would be able to feel as much job satisfaction if I didn't maintain those relationships while I was here.
Yeah. Now is the best part, the lightning round.
Yeah, you didn't give me any of these.
What TV show, book, movie, or podcast would you recommend?
One of my favorite books is The Boys in the Boat. And it is, without getting too into the details, it's a true story about the Washington University crew team that goes into Berlin during the 1936 Olympics.
Okay.
And ends up winning Olympic gold. And the reason it was so impactful for me is it's just a story of immense resiliency. And there's something so inspiring about being able to adapt and overcome. And if you haven't read, I actually saw, I think they're making a movie about it. I think I
That's
just
how you
saw
know
it.
it's a good book.
I think I just saw it. But if you haven't yet read the book, highly recommend it.
Do you have any New Year's resolutions?
Balance. Yeah, I think one of the things I struggle with most is an effective or an efficient work-life balance.
Yeah.
And it's a tightrope that I think most working professionals struggle with. So if I'm going to fall off of the tightrope, I hope that it will be towards the family side a bit more frequently than it has been in the past.
Okay, that's a good one. Do you have a favorite duty station?
Personally, Okinawa.
It's Okinawa.
Okinawa provided this jumping off point for just these phenomenal travel experiences. My oldest has walked the Great Wall of China. She has swam the Great Barrier Reef. She has gone to Seoul, to you name it. She's been all over the South Pacific. And from just a unit perspective, San Diego, California, 1st Reconnaissance Battalion, my experiences there as a young lieutenant are 100% the reason I remain in this organization today. Location, Okinawa, experience, and unit, 1st Reconnaissance Battalion.
What I'm sensing is you're a beach guy.
Oh, you have sensed correctly.
You want all the nice weather.
I just need a little bit of heat. I think I'm actually allergic to winter at this point. So trying to avoid it.
It's like super windy and in the 40s here. It's awful. It's awful. Last question. Chocolate or vanilla, or you can fill in the blank if you're not a chocolate or vanilla guy.
I would say chocolate.
Okay.
And I would say that it has evolved over the years. Yeah. So, or is C bourbon? Because we could go to bourbon instead.
We can say bourbon.
Yeah, maybe bourbon over both.
Okay. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me. And just what a great experience to get to sit here and talk to you today.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Equipping the Core. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcasting platform or on social media. We'd love to hear from you.